Hello, welcome to the session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Dinara Sarsekeyeva, and today I am delighted to represent ITU, and I'm excited to have a conversation about tech and tech careers with Amanda Rejström, CEO and founder of Spark Sustainability. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech being recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2022. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. The objectives of Girls in ICT Day are to help to create a global environment that empowers and encourages girls and young women to consider studies and careers in the growing field of information and communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. The goals of the series include to interest and inspire girls and younger women with information about a range of ICT careers, to bring before a broader audience some of the role model women in tech and share information about their career journeys and work, to offer diverse examples of how ICT is being used to support achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and other UN goals, to showcase initiatives that are working with girls to support them in ICT studies or future ICT careers, and finally, to provide girls and young women in tech with a leadership opportunity to represent and promote girls in tech organization with which they are involved and promote it to a broader international audience. To kick this session off, I am going to introduce you to Amanda, founder and CEO of Spark Sustainability. Amanda has a master's degree in energy engineering from Aalto University and has previously worked as a researcher at VTT. She's passionate about climate action. And additionally, I would like to tell you a little bit about Amanda's startup, Spark Sustainability, which enables and inspires people to make climate friendly choices in everyday life. Spark Sustainability gives you science based facts on greenhouse gas emissions and show you the huge impact our actions have when we combine our efforts. Spark Sustainability shows you that taking climate action isn't about giving up on things, it's about improving quality of life. Additionally, Spark Sustainability's app, Carbon Donut, helps individuals discover emission reducing solutions and measure their positive climate impact. By featuring only truly climate smart products, Carbon Donut makes climate action easy for individuals while increasing the market share for future friendly businesses, all to make the transition to carbon neutrality smoother. For more information, you can visit www.sparksustainability.com. I am myself very passionate about climate action and believe that doing nothing about climate action will end up costing us a lot more than if we take actions now that will lead to more jobs, greater prosperity, and better lives for all, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and build climate resilience. I'm delighted to now shift with a conversation with Amanda and would love to start by asking you, Amanda, to tell us a little bit more about your journey as a woman in tech. When and how did you first get into technology?
When I first got into technology is actually when I decided to apply to the tech university. So that was in 2010 when I was 20. And that was actually a series of events. I was very good at mathematics and good at physics and chemistry, and I was wondering what I could use those skills for. And so I had a very good chemistry teacher who taught me about climate change, and I figured, well, this is a big challenge that I want to be part of solving. And so I decided to go into energy engineering. So that's sort of my first touch with tech. But then if we're talking ICT, that's way later. That's in 2018 after I founded my own company. What about you?
Sounds
When did you get
amazing.
into tech?
Originally, I just got into tech when I started my internship with ITU. And before that, I would never imagine myself working for ITU. It always sounded like something way above my head. but I'm very glad to learn more about ICTs and ways it can improve our environment, help animals, and create a better future for all, especially right now during the time of a pandemic. And I feel like that's amazing that you started your career in tech very early when applying to university and found ways to apply tech into something you really enjoy, into changing the world to make it a better place for everyone. That's really inspiring.
Thank you.
And following on that, I wanted to ask you, did you encounter any challenges and what lessons that you learned along the way you'd like to share with us?
There's always loads of challenges. I think the most important lesson that I learned along the way is that this is going to sound like a cliche, but done is better than perfect. Um, I feel like many young women, probably also many young men, but at least many young women that I know and myself have this feeling in the beginning that we need to do everything perfectly, and if it's not, this sort of comes from excuse me, from the school system, that we're always measured on sort of how we perform in a certain task, and and the only way to sort of shine all the time and be good all the time is to make that perfect score the whole time. So it sort of trains you to think that work and even life is about getting that perfect score the whole time, which is just simply not true. The harder the challenges that are thrown at you, or the more complex and sort of less defined they will be, the more impossible it'll be to get a full score. I mean, who even defines what the full score is at that point anymore? So, yeah, done is better than perfect is definitely sort of the biggest thing that I think I learned during the way. And yeah, the way I learned that does sort of go back to the challenges, that the feeling of not, yeah, of being totally out of your depth, of not knowing how to do what you're supposed to do, and then learning that the way you do it is just to take one little step at a time, and then ask when you feel like you have no idea where to start. Talk to someone who might know. And normally the magical thing that you will notice at that point is that that person doesn't know either. They will give you some hints, but talking to them will give you sort of the understanding that, okay, there is no one who knows exactly how to do this, that you need to just sort of figure it out, and that it's okay that it's not perfect the whole time.
Wow, that's a great advice, and I completely agree with you. I believe that it's always important to try, even though if you don't know how exactly to achieve something, it's always better to try and take steps and learn along the way rather than to
Exactly.
give up at the very beginning. It worked for you perfectly. Like,
Well, I wouldn't go so far, but it's worked so far.
that's very inspiring what you're doing right now and how this helped you to come to create Spark sustainability. And now I wanted to ask you, now that you're a CEO, what's your typical workday looks like?
They're very varied. So it depends a lot on where we are at the moment with the company. For instance, now a lot of my time goes to fundraising, and to sort of talking to our most important clients. And then at some other point of the year, my time might go a lot to managing the team, making sure that everyone is doing all right, that no one has too much work, and a lot of questions are about sort of how do we grow the team, how do we recruit in a way that um, yeah, supports our culture and brings more knowledge into the team without sort of bringing more problems or something that we didn't foresee before. So that sort of sets the scene that it really varies. At the moment, my typical day, we're finally back at the office. There's just six of us in our team, so we're back at the office for 2 or 3 days a week. So now I really enjoy going into the offices on Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays to see the entire team, to have weekly meetings on site with everyone there, and then yeah, taking a few customer meetings and taking some fundraising meetings, and then talking to my team and seeing who needs help and who needs support in what decisions. The one thing I actually miss in my everyday life is the engineering work, like actually sitting somewhere with Excel or with calculating emissions is what I love to do, and that's actually something that I do very seldom nowadays. Now this week I'm working on a task of that type, and I'm really happy about it. But it's a lot of managing for sure.
That sounds amazing, and I'm really happy that you can go back to the office and see people in person. I feel like we all missed that during the pandemic,
Yes.
interacting with people a little bit more. And I also wanted to ask you, since you mentioned you love engineering and working with Excel, can you share an example or two of things you have done in or with tech that you're particularly proud of?
Yes, of course. I think the most sort of obvious or the biggest thing that comes to mind when you ask that is that we built our own carbon calculator. That was right in the beginning of the history of Spark sustainability back in 2017, 2018. Um, and that's something that is sort of part of my journey in tech, if you may, sort of that I was we just founded Spark, and it was about trying to figure out where emissions come from. And there wasn't at the time in Finland a calculator that told private people or individuals where their emissions come from and how they sort of um, how big they are in comparison to each other. For instance, if you fly somewhere, or if you choose to be a vegan, how big is that? Or if you choose not to fly, and if you choose to be a vegan, how big is the difference there? So the experience of having these questions and then picking the problem apart, doing the research, and building this calculator that does this, that calculates this. That's definitely the one thing that I'm sort of the most proud of. And I have to say right after that the second would probably be where we are right now with Spark and with the app. So this calculator turned into an app later, and that's something that for this team and for me, who never built an app before, is still amazing every day. I'm like, wow, we built an app and it actually works and it actually looks good and people actually like to use it. So that's something that keeps on giving. It's really, really fun. It's very challenging as well, and nothing is finished. Sort of, there's a lot of stuff to do still, but it's really fun to work on.
I really like how this idea with calculator later lead you to the idea to create your own app, because I also downloaded this app, and
Oh yeah.
honestly I'm so impressed by it because like an entertaining app. It's not like a typical data like science statistics. You can actually spend so much time on it, just reading the blog posts and like doing the exercises, researching. A lot of my friends now use it as well.
Wow,
So
cool. I'm so happy to
that's
hear.
really
I
that's
think
really
that
amazing how you came up with this
I think
with
that's
your
kind of the
team.
most fun part about, I mean, technology is so broad, but ICT and this where we're talking now, sort of that you can actually build something from scratch. And then if there's something that isn't working, you can quite easily tweak it. I mean, easily in comparison with sort of building a huge hardware machine. I like that about technology, that it's, sort of a building block. It's like a Lego set. It's fun. What about you, Dinara? What do you like about technology? How come you're in it, and what do you enjoy about it?
I really like that with technology, you can, as you mentioned, you can always switch things around and build it to your own preference. I know a lot of my friends, we all have different interests, but with technology, we can create something together. For example, I'm really passionate about the environment issues, and my friend, she's really good at drawing and creating like digital banners.
Mm.
And together we made a project back in college about climate action in our city, Almaty. And it was just really fun to work on it together. Me doing one part, her doing the other part, and just the whole process of combining our ideas and through technology presenting it, and sometimes looking at it, and we thought maybe we should change this and that. So I really like that we both can create our visions in something unique, something that no one has ever seen before, and maybe, and you never know, maybe one day it's gonna become something big. That's what I really enjoy about technology. And I really like that these days it's becoming more accessible to more girls and younger generations. So yeah, that's my favorite thing about it. And I also wanted to ask you, what do you like best about your job, and maybe more specifically working with app? Like, do you enjoy more engineering part, or interacting with your colleagues about creating apps?
I have to say what I like the most about my job, sort of as a whole, is the mission. Um, our mission at Spark is to mitigate emissions, and the more we grow, the more emissions we will mitigate. So that's something that whatever happens, sort of at work, whatever happens in the rest of my life, that's a mission that keeps me going. That's something that feels worth fighting for and worth working really hard for. Working hard doesn't mean that you shouldn't take breaks and have fun, but anyway, sort of this really good reason to work. That's what I love the most about this job, to have my own company and be able to choose that reason, sort of why I work. But then more specifically about building an app, I have to say it's my colleague Anna who is the product owner of the Carbon Donut app, and so I'm more on the team management and fundraising part. So sadly, I'm not that in on the daily software development. I'm in on bigger decisions and in on sort of testing and bigger sort of everything that's around it. But I would say what you mentioned really in your project with your friend, this aspect of having many people who have different skills work on the same project. Because there you really see how something gets so much better when people with different experiences work with it and comment on it and continuously come up with new ideas for how to make it better. And that goes for both everyone in our team. I mean, how we discuss the product and make it better the whole time, but also for the interactions that we have with users or with other stakeholders, our customers, when we sort of have these interchanges and realize how we can make the product better based on feedback that we got from someone. I think that that's so cool, how many people together build something way better than one person could have built. So that's going to be my favorite.
I definitely agree with that part. I always think that when people have different skills but share one mission, the result is always going to end up something great and something big. I know that Spark Sustainability, and it's a great startup. And I just wanted to ask you, did you encounter any challenges that along the way that sometimes maybe you thought it's not going to work, or what was your major
Definitely.
challenge?
We definitely did, and we definitely still do. There have been many. I think that's sort of part of the game. You can't really have a huge project without having a lot of setbacks. I'd say the number one challenge for our company really is about fitting the mission together with the business case. Because we're such an impact and mission driven company, it's hard at times to strike that balance between how do we fulfill our mission but still make money. So that's got to be sort of the number one thing, making that call over and over again. So is this something we want to get into? Is this a customer we want to engage with and have in our app? And also sort of there are challenges there around how you build the business case. Is it possible for a climate impact startup to make money based on how sort of making people want to consume more services and products. We're sort of trying to shift consumption from buying, for instance, buying clothes to renting clothes, or from having your own car to using a car sharing service. But in some of these cases, we're still sort of pushing people to try a new service. And how do we then know that they don't sort of consume more, and these type of things? So that's going to be sort of the biggest challenge. And then I would say, mentioning just a few from the past, I don't know, 18 months, we've had problems with with recruiting, or sort of with how new recruits fit into the team, and how we make that whole thing work when the culture changes. I think that's something that happens every time company grows a lot. There were 3 of us, and then in the end of the year there were 6 of us, so a lot of things are going to change, right? And that's always challenging when you're doing those things for the first time, when you haven't sort of done that before. So that's going to be hard. And then maybe a very typical one for small businesses that are just starting out is how to bring that weight to the table. It's hard to win the deal in the end, or to make it look in a way that is very beneficial enough for you and your company. So we've had situations where we discussed for a very long time with very, very big companies about things that were interesting for us, but in the end, they fell through because the larger company can sort of ask for all of the benefits, and we're so small that then we're like, well, we can't really do this then. And then we've wasted sort of half a year of negotiations. So that's something that I think you get better at in the longer run, sort of seeing those situations from a little bit earlier, and being able to ask the right questions right on top, like, I mean, in the beginning, because being in those types of really, really high stakes and really important and interesting partnership discussions for half a year, and then it falls through, is really expensive for the company and for the team, and it's really tiring. So yeah, those, just to mention a few. There have been a lot of challenges, and there is a lot of challenges to come, but I mean, that's how you build something, like one challenge at a time and overcoming those. So it's all right.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a lot of pressure and workload. And I'm happy that you're staying very optimistic about that and understand that great things require a lot of effort and time. And that leads me to my next question. What do you think is the future of Spark sustainability, and how technology can make a better future for Spark sustainability?
I think the future for Spark sustainability uh, goes hand in hand with sort of a lot of things that are going to change in our society. I really hope that personal climate action is going to be something that's very mainstream within the next 5 years. I not just hope so, I believe so. It seems like we're going in that direction. And the more mainstream it becomes, the more mainstream it becomes to use tools that help you with that. So that obviously goes with sort of more people being aware of the tools and the apps, or the whatever tools that there are around there that can help you reach those goals, or sort of take this new journey as an individual. Um, it's also quite interesting, since our customers are all companies, or sort of in these areas where you can see very, very big growth. So circular economies, or circular economy companies, or companies with a circular business model, or companies that produce something in a new way that produces less emissions. Those are the companies that I really believe are going to grow in the next 10, 5, 20 years. So that's also interesting, that if our customers are experiencing large growth, then that should mean great things for us as well. But that said, I have to say that sort of the entire reason with building a company, or with starting a project like this, at least for me, it isn't to become big or sort of make it huge. For me, it's about staying true to the mission from the beginning till the end, whenever that end comes and in whatever form it comes. So making sure that every day, or at least sort of every month that you work, you're on track and you're still solving the problem that you set out to solve. Because in our case, it's so central to why we do this. So it's really about, we want to solve this problem and we want to be part of creating this little solution for climate change. And that's what we're good at. And that's what we're going to sort of keep iterating at and keep sort of solving that. There's a lot of interesting things happening in terms of traceability and in terms of how, I mean, there are already obviously apps that sort of automatically track how you move, and then you can count that towards your carbon footprint. Um, and not to mention all the apps that connect your banking or sort of your everyday purchases to emission calculation. So I believe that in the future, a lot of this will be automated, but I really hope that it will not all be automated, because there's also a lot of climate action decisions that are not connected to whether you spend money or not. Rather, they're connected to if you don't spend money, and that any bank account can't sort of read that, oh, you didn't buy that dress. Great. Good for you. So I really hope that while technology sort of works in the background and gets more and more, I mean, these tools get smarter and then they can be automated. I still hope that they continue to work as sort of a um, educational plaything that you can sort of pick out when you're bored, that you would pick out something that teaches you something when you're bored. I mean, learning a language is a great example through Duolingo. So if you're waiting for the bus, you can like learn some Spanish at the same time. And I hope that apps like ours will work in the same way, that when you feel like you need to sort of do something, consume some time, then you can learn something. And that does sort of require you to engage. So everything can't be measured in the background. And yeah, I hope that technology's role in this whole thing is to show us how we're all in this together in the climate crisis, and how everyone's actions really matter. That's my standpoint.
Yes, I definitely agree with you that I believe in a future Spark will grow a lot because, as you mentioned, climate action is something we have no time to postpone for later or wait. We need to take action now, and especially with the ongoing pandemic, it's really amazing to have apps and startups like Spark, because people can use this online resources to educate themselves and to learn about their own impact on our environment. So that's really amazing what you're doing, and that you believe in your mission. And I remember you mentioned that your goal is not to grow big, but rather stay true to your mission. And I always feel like people who are very dedicated to their missions, like you, it's almost there's no way of not succeeding.
Well, that's nice to hear. Let's hope it's true.
I'm sure it's true. I also wanted to ask you, besides your job, do you have any other interesting projects you would like to tell us about, or activities you would like to tell us about?
I don't have any sort of traditional side projects. There isn't really time, or there isn't really sort of bandwidth. But I do sit on the board of two other companies on the side of my day job. So that's something that takes time out of my calendar every sort of once a month. And that's really interesting too. They're very different, the two companies. So it's very interesting to see um, how sustainability plays a role in very different businesses, and how you can bring it in varying ways. And also how hard you can push different areas, because there's a huge difference in sort of the very traditional and old sort of production based businesses and then retail. So how you can sort of yeah, how I can push the boards of these companies to take sustainability into account. So that I would say is sort of then my other, yeah, my other projects. But besides working, I mean, obviously I love to work. It's because there's this big mission and because I know why I work. I really enjoy it, and it's a way of fulfilling yourself. But I have to say, I find it super important to have time offline and to do things that are sort of in the physical world when I'm not working, and to be very clear about when my work time is over. So besides working, I really love spending time outdoors and cooking and yeah, being with friends. I love to ski in the winter, and I read a lot and things like this that really take me away from screens. I have a hard time spending my downtime on a screen because I feel like I'm always on a screen otherwise, especially now during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something we can all relate, especially with the pandemic when everything switched to online. That's really important to have other things to do besides your job and having hobbies, because I feel that that inspires you to be more productive and maybe get inspiration to work better. And that's
Definitely.
what,
And it reminds you that work isn't everything, which makes it easier to, yeah, to make better decisions, funnily enough, at work. Because when you're sort of completely in it and you think that this is my entire life and this is my entire identity, and if this doesn't work, then, you know, I am bust. When you're in that narrative, um, you tend to sort of be more paranoid and make worse decisions.
I think what you said, it's really important because many people, especially young girls, they're might get carried away by the thing that you have to work 24/7 if you're a woman in tech, or if you're a woman who's trying to build a career for herself, you
Yeah.
always have to work nonstop, 7 days a week to prove something to someone. And I agree that sometimes it's important to just take a break for yourself to reflect on your maybe old projects, to then get inspiration, go somewhere outside, enjoy your life. It's not always about working.
Exactly, and it's yeah. I mean, well-being people work better. They think better. So they also work better, and yeah, they have better lives, which is more important actually than how they work. But in this very work-centric world and very sort of efficiency-centric world, and where we want to measure everything by achievement, it always sort of that's the argument that sticks when you tell someone that, hey, you have to rest because then you work better. But it's actually about having a better life, and people who have a good life and are happy and in their own lives are sort of more whole human beings who can also bring more of themselves to the job that they do. I'm really happy to live in the Nordics, where I feel like the culture is more well, sort of less hard, maybe if you may, than in the States, for instance. Here we do take summer holidays. We absolutely take our weekends off and things like this. And I feel that we're better at work for it. And I also feel like, regardless if we were better at work for it or not, we, yeah, in my opinion, live better lives than if you work really hard. This is all coming from a place where years ago I worked too much and had a burnout and was very very ill. After that, I've learned to be really careful about that and set my boundaries. And I feel like I'm a way better sort of CEO and working person right now than when I used to have this feeling that you described, that I needed to be somewhere all the time and I needed to prove something to someone or everyone. Now that I realize that I need to do my job within the limits of my own energy, I'm actually very much better at my job. So I feel like this is really important, and that it can't be said enough in this context of young people starting out their career, because that's exactly when people sort of overestimate how much they can do, or at least that was the case for me.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. That today it's really hard to find this balance, but balanced life between work and your personal life and hobbies.
Yeah.
It's really the key to achieving this success in all areas of life, and just to truly enjoy what you're doing, and staying staying faithful to your mission. I feel like only through this balance it will all come together, and you will be more effective, productive, and happier.
I think you're absolutely right.
This also leads me to another question. Um, do you have any messages for other young women in tech, or maybe even not so young women in tech?
I guess that would be sort of related to what I said earlier, about done being better than perfect. And if I was thinking about this earlier, I was like, what would I tell myself sort of 10 years back? Um, my message is really to dare to just try out things. Um, and to have this sort of, I nowadays have this sort of image in my head that that I'm trying to sort of visualize what would someone who wasn't this sort of very careful, very perfectionist, often girl, what would they do? Sort of, if you're as a stereotype, like a wild boy who doesn't really care. I'm sorry, now there's gender stereotypes here, but just for the sake of example, just try things and don't be so afraid of when you tried something and it didn't work, or when you said something and someone didn't understand, or someone thought it was dumb or weird. It doesn't really matter. I think we're trained way too much, especially as young women, to fit in, to be enough, to be in this area of tech. And when you're trying to sort of break in there, it's not even enough to be enough. You have to be more, like you mentioned earlier, that you have to push and you have to surprise and you have to be sort of playing the game at a level that no guy is expected to play it, sort of to break through that glass ceiling. And this is exhausting. So so really my message would be to be less afraid, to just try things and notice when you try many things that some of them are going to work, and also that it doesn't really matter if you upset someone at some point or if everyone doesn't love you. It's not possible that everyone you ever meet will like you or love you or feel like you're the best person ever. It's okay to not be liked, and it's okay to have an opinion that's not popular. And yeah, trying out things and just sort of making your way one step at a time was, at least for me, a way to find sort of my ground, and realize that to me it's more important that I work with things that I find meaningful and in ways that I find supportive and good, instead of sort of making someone else happy and filling some stereotype. That was a really long answer, but yeah, just try things out and be okay with some people sometimes not liking you. It's all right, as long as you like yourself.
That was really a great response, and a very meaningful one, because I really believe that as long as you're learning, you're not failing. And that's definitely something that I believe a lot of young people lack in our generation, or in every generation, maybe, because you always, when you look at people like you from our age, I guess we tend to think that, oh, they came so far and everything was perfect for them. We never really tend to understand the challenges and like failures, problems of other people, and we're sort of afraid to make our own mistakes. But it's never a failure, it's always a lesson. So that's
Yeah,
a really
and
important.
I think that it doesn't really ever feel like you reach the goal line. I think it moves. So yeah, looking back 10 years ago, I would have probably myself thought that, whoa, if I have my startup and I'm a CEO, then that's got to mean that everything is great. And once you're here, you see all the problems that are here today, and how am I going to make sure that my company is funded? How am I going to make sure that we're still here 2 or 5 or 10 years from now, and that everyone working in the company has a good workplace and a good salary and not too much work. And how am I going to make sure that the mission is fulfilled this whole time and that we don't sort of lose it? So yeah, I think people are always afraid. And we tend to be bad at sort of appreciating what we have and being like, wow, I arrived here, this is amazing. You're always just looking at the next challenge. And so the trick is to understand that everyone is looking at the next challenge, and it's okay, that's part of life. And that's what makes it so interesting, because it would be really boring walking around being like, okay, it's done now, I made it, cool, let's, I don't know, what would you do then? There would be nothing left to do.
Exactly. And I also feel that's amazing that you work in tech field, and I believe you're a great example for many girls that they shouldn't be
Thank you.
scared to pursue careers in tech, especially with this field being gender imbalanced. It's really important to just not get too discouraged by the fact that it's gender imbalanced, and it's more important to just focus on what you're good at and to be focused on developing skills you want to develop and
Exactly.
not spend too much time on other external factors. I think that wraps up our session for Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really enjoyed our chat today. And
Thank you,
thank you
Dinara.
so much for sharing your story. And that was
Likewise.
a pleasure.
For me as well. Thank you so much.